Stay tuned to the end of the video for a Spider-Gwen #1 J. Scott Campbell sketch variant.
Comic fam, good to see you. Hit that subscribe button. We're back again like we do every single week to chat about the most in-demand back issues right now. And I'm sitting on the mic with my good friend Jem from Gem Mint Collectibles. How you feeling, brother?
You know it, I'm feeling great. How are you?
Dude, I'm feeling good. I think we should start this list off of the comic books that will define a generation of comic book collecting. Let's just get the books from last week right up on the screen. Because you know what? By the end of this video, 3 of them will be replaced. And some of these are only going to be variants that are going to be lasting on this list week over week. And I want to start it off with, I think, the most impressive spike, the hottest book right now in the market, Venom issue #3.
That's right, Tom. We have Venom #3, but more specifically, the 3rd printing, which kind of has his first cover appearance. We'll talk about that later. But this dethroned Ultimate Fallout 4 as the hottest in-demand book right now. There was an explosion of copies that sold and tons of 9.8s that are breaking records almost every single day. Just a few weeks ago, this was a $350 book, but we're now seeing averages of $900 and even saw a high sale of $1,000 just this past weekend. I say kind of his first cover appearance because there's a little bit of a debate on if the Venom 5 store exclusive variant that featured a no cover predates the 3rd printing of issue 3. It seems like the market is dictating that issue 3 is the key to own, but there is a little asterisk next to that first cover appearance.
That's right. I've seen the receipts. Technically, it beat it, but it's very narrow, and the community is deciding. Let's take a look at the next book on this list here. We have Star Wars: The Clone Wars, issue #1. We've been talking about Ahsoka Tano a lot over the last few weeks of covering all these comics for the community. But let's take a look at specifically this variant here. This was a Dark Horse 100 variant, limited, as mentioned, to 1,000 copies, but it's seen some crazy movement in the market. Let's start this back in May with a 9.8, hitting $1,000. Now in June, just last month, we saw average sales approaching that $690 to $800 marker for a high-grade copy. Now, in July, we're seeing $1,000 raw, and at a 9.6, a new record hitting $2,000. All right, that's double the price for less the grade for a 9.6 copy. This has now been clearly the book to take the lead of comic book collectors as far as their interest goes. And I found out today there was actually a listing of a 9.8 that says it's only going to be available for the next 24 hours. So by the time you're actually watching this video, we may be able to show an update on screen if this sold. But Jem, could you believe that this had a price tag of $10,000?
Insane.
Now, this book was actually distributed lottery style to comic book stores across the country, so it's hyper scarce, very hard to find, especially in high grade. I'm curious. I'm going to kick this question out to the community because this is the notes from the top 10 hot comic books list on Key Collector Comics. Could this prove to be the modern Amazing Fantasy 15 of Star Wars books? We've had a lot of characters spike in recent time. This could be that issue. And I'm curious what the community has to say in the comment section below.
Now we're going to go to a book that I mentioned. It was dethroned by Venom 3 with a 3rd printing variant cover. We're talking about Ultimate Fallout 4, and these CGC 9.8s are on fire. This is another book that was a $350 book just in 2019. The book's now averaging $1,100. In the last couple of videos, we've talked about the 1 out of 25 Marco Jajaric variant. There hasn't been any other sales since we last reported on the 2 $9,000 sales. We're going to keep an eye on it, but no news there.
And we actually saw the buyer on Instagram showcase his Newsstand variant of this very issue of Ultimate Fallout Cover A, first appearance of Miles Morales. It happened. I know some people were thinking that this unicorn was maybe a sale that didn't actually take place. Nah, that comic made it to the buyer's hands. That sale is good.
Yeah, so we've talked about Ultimate Fallout 4 for the last couple of weeks. What's going on with Edge of the Spider-Verse 2?
That's right. Spider-Gwen still on the list proudly, and she's not going anywhere. There's actually only 2 characters from that hit animation that has really maintained such a high level of interest since the debut. Now, in this last week, those land variants that we were talking about a bunch, they're basically gone. They're being bought up, and there really hasn't been any sales worth mentioning. However, we're talking about Edge of Spider-Verse cover A right here, right now. 9.8s are up from last week. We were reporting $800 news sales, now hitting $850 strong. And I want to showcase that because this is how the market goes. Some people may find it a little confusing with how the variant market may affect standard cover A's, but when those later prints become more scarce, the second prints or the variant covers, it pushes those prices to new grounds because of scarcity. And then those more attainable covers, those cover A's, those start to move. Thus, this week, $50 already in change in the last 7 days. Now, the land variant, I'll remind you, about a year ago, we saw it's like a dual signed copy by Greg Land and Stan Lee. So there's a little bit of an inflation to this particular example that I'm giving. It matters. Bear with me. $5,700 is what this book went for months ago. Relisted this week for $15,000. It's the same book. If this book or other land variants start to sell for a higher amount, I expect to see that cover A to move just as swiftly.
Yeah, it sounds like somebody's trying to triple up.
That's right.
Speaking of Spider-Verse, we're going to talk about The Amazing Spider-Man #4. We're going to talk about the Humberto Ramos variant. This was an average of $300 in a 9.8 just last month. We saw a slew of copies sold this week, and they're approaching the $700 mark. So we're seeing big jumps in this lower ratio variant. Now, Silk is rumored to be part of the Edge of the Spider-Verse 2, which is driving a lot of hype for the character.
Dude, we chatted with Humberto Ramos, and he seems so optimistic about seeing his character hit the screen, man. He thought it was going to happen.
I think he was kind of surprised she didn't. So it leaves a lot of room for her to show up in the sequel, and collectors are paying attention.
It's made the list because not only has it sustained, it's gone up a staggering amount. Let's take a look at Invincible Iron Man #9. We got the Delgado cover A making this list. We were chatting about this last week, Jem. We were discussing how the market has kind of started to look a different way for Riri Williams. Is it the cameo in issue 7, or is it the first time she's throwing on some Iron Man type mech armor in issue #9? And the much preferred Turncloak cover is what we were chatting about last week. Well, this week, we're looking at cover A because it's hit a staggering $500 for 9.8s. We were only predicting last week that this cover would hit those numbers. Something I really like about the analysis that Key Collector does of these books, we get some insight to like private sales data. Let me read you what it says about the Turncloak cover. It says it was averaging $450 at 9.8 last week, and it's likely more sought out, but the few copies that traded hands this week were via private transactions with little insight into the prices. We anticipate that copies sold in the public form would garner higher prices than the Delgado cover. This is stuff that you're not even going to know based off of eBay because our sources are giving us private information.
Yeah, that's some good insight. And we have some more insight on our next book, Amazing Spider-Man 361, the Newsstand variant. This has been maintaining an average of $600 in a 9.8. But what's interesting is that the direct market copies are starting to creep up to about a $500 average. We're seeing a lot of interest in this book because Carnage is going to be a villain in the new Venom movie, Let There Be Carnage. Everybody wants to see what Woody Harrelson's going to do with the character, and there's a lot of hype surrounding the book. Now, that Newsstand variant, it is a smaller ratio. About 1 out of every 4 books is a Newsstand variant that goes up on eBay in a 9.8. So it's a smaller ratio, but it's actually one of the most common Newsstand variants out there.
That's up almost $100 in just 7 days, Jem. That's huge because last week we were chatting about how intriguing it was that the Newsstand was starting to gain more traction than that standard cover A. We got to keep watching it, especially as this movie approaches. And now, let's get the newcomers. We have 3 newcomers to the list, and let's give a big welcome to the first one that's making a splash. Clearly, the most important sale for a new modern book that's probably happened this year.
We're talking about Albedo number 2. This is the first appearance of Usagi Yojimbo. This is a highly sought after book, very hard to find in a 9.8. Just 2 years ago, a 9.8 sold for $7,000. But this last week, we have a sale of $19,800. A huge difference from just a few years ago.
Dang, comic fam, these are huge numbers, 20 grand. This is a monumental sale for this book, and it's a very respected run and a character that came out really out of like the comic explosion of the 80s. You know, you got the Crow, you got the Tick, you got Grendel, and you got Usagi Yojimbo. And what's interesting is this past week, we saw animation news. We're going to see a rendition of this world with a descendant of this character in the far future. CGI, it's going to be very different than the comic, but it's bringing attention to this run.
Yeah, most people probably remember Usagi Yojimbo from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles action figures. They had 2 of them, the regular one and then the Space Usagi. And most people probably wrote him off as a character that was just created for that toy line. But Stan Sakai created Usagi Yojimbo and this whole universe. It's a highly sought after book. I always kind of equate it to like a Western manga. It's black and white, it's kind of anamorphic, but it's a great book and it looks like they're going to be doing some things with this universe.
Only having a print run of 2,000, and the reason why we know that is because it says that on the inside cover of the book. A very low count of 174 are listed having been graded by the CGC on their census. That's not very many, and it makes sense why this book is so wanted. Another book that is a newcomer to the list. Let's welcome, one of my all-time favorite keys, man. I don't know about you, Jem, but I'm a huge Constantine fan, and we got Swamp Thing issue 37, his first full appearance in comic books, making the list.
Yeah, John Constantine is a fan favorite character. He definitely deserves some hype on his first appearance in Saga the Swamp Thing 37. The rumors are that there might be a Justice League Dark or there might be some HBO Max stuff happening that's driving hype for John Constantine.
Heck, there's rumors of another movie appearance. I don't know. Is Keanu going to reprise his role? Well, the day that you're watching this video, which is the week of San Diego Comic-Con at home, there's going to be a 15th anniversary panel. Keanu Reeves is going to be talking about how much he loved playing this character, how much he wants to play him again. Can you imagine, Jem, if he even leads on a little bit, that he'd be down to do it? What records are going to break again for this book? Because today we're reporting on 2 record breakers this week. The first, a 9.8 copy hitting $895. We thought that was staggering because that was a $600 book this time last year. And then we had another record breaker just days later hitting $1,000.
Yeah, we know Keanu Reeves likes to have his hands in the comic industry. They just announced, actually, that he's going to be writing his own new comic book series. I think it's pronounced Berserker. It's kind of looks like that. And it looks like it's an autobiography of, like, an immortal superhero that looks eerily like Keanu Reeves.
Yeah, and Boom Studios is putting it out. It looks ridiculous. The one thing that I know is that it's hyper violent, like just crazy stuff is going to be found in these pages. What do you get, though? I mean, if you give Keanu Reeves the freedom to do whatever he wants in comic, I mean, we're going to get some crazy stuff.
I'm all in.
Comic fam, hit that subscribe button, slap that like button. We're going to be doing a giveaway today. We want to hear what you think about this list in the comment section below. We got the Spider-Gwen #1. J. Scott Campbell sketch variant, and we got to chat about the last newcomer to the list. Oh my goodness. Godly Comics is getting excited on Instagram. We got Batman Beyond issue #1 making the list.
Yeah, this is the first comic book appearance of Terry McGinnis, Batman Beyond. There's a lot of speculation going on right now, especially with all this Michael Keaton stuff. Is he going to reprise his role as Bruce Wayne? Does that mean he could potentially be a Batman Beyond storyline? Either way, this book is spiking.
Book is spiking. We're seeing 2 mega sales, giant sales this week. One for $1,200, which surprised a lot of collectors, but then soon followed a $1,350 sale. And there's no media rumors in the last week. There isn't anything new. Now, this is collectors who are putting money behind this character created by Bruce Timm and Paul Dini.
I'm going to give a shout out to some folks that tagged us on Instagram with the hot books from last week. I'm going to give a shout out to Griffey1224. Let's give a shout out to Lib Castaneda. Big shout out to Jay Collects Comics for that Ultimate Fallout 4. And a huge shout out to my boy Dr. Allmight, who found a Venom number 3 for cover price at his local comic shop. And that's why these types of videos are important. He might have not even had Venom 3 on the brain, but because he saw the video, he went out hunting and he found himself a big book.
Dang, that's a great grab, man. That's like a $450 book at 9.8 right now. Well done. Ooh, and big shout out to Solid High, the comic guy, showing off his 9.8 Edge of Spider-Verse issue number 2, making me jelly. And then we also have Octavio Torres, my homie, showing off a bunch of his null appearances, and they got a bunch of yellow labels. It's glaring at me like it's the sun, man.
Now guys, tag us in any of these books from this list on Instagram and we'll repost it in the story and maybe give you a shout out in the next video.
We appreciate your time today. Comment down below, and as always,
stay minty fresh and geek responsibly.
Ooh, enough said.